Hi, Algebra 1A students. It's Miss Carol again. We are now on lesson 10, which is the last lesson for project 2, and this should be pretty short and sweet. So let's go ahead and get started. Agent Theo Baker works in the analytics department and is responsible for analyzing and presenting data collected at crime scenes. From the crimes that were solved in modules 2 through 4, there were several equations that were used to represent the information. Help Theo use those equations to make graphs of those lines to use as visual representations. Okay, so for the first one, it says, in Module 2, you wrote an equation of a line that represents the distance between a sports car and an officer's location. That equation was y equals 93x plus 1/2. Select the graph below that correctly graphs that equation. So what we are looking for is a graph with a positive slope of 93 and a y-intercept of 1/2. Okay, so let's scroll down and see if we can find that. Let's see, this graph here intercepts at 0, so that cannot be right, and it's also a negative slope, so I know for sure that's not right. Oh, I guess it does intercept at y equal 0.5, but it has a negative slope, so we know that's not right. This graph here would appear to have a very steep slope, intercept at 0 and 0.5, so that's in the right direction. And let's see, it also looks like when x is 1, y is somewhere in the neighborhood of 93.5, which is where it would need to be if our slope was 93. This graph here actually has an x-intercept of 0.5, and we're looking for a y-intercept of 0.5. Okay, so this cannot be it, but it looks like it has a nice steep slope. This has the right intercept, but it has the x and y's switched, so we're graphing the wrong thing. Our slope isn't nearly as steep as we need it to be. So the best answer, even though we can't read it exactly, is going to be this first one, or sorry, the second one. Okay. Second question. In Module 3, you wrote an equation to represent the location of a monkey and the person that kidnapped him from the zoo. The equation was y minus 32 equals 50 times the quantity x minus 3/2. Select the process that correctly graphs the line. Okay, so if you remember, we did actually already graph this out, and we knew that we have a point at 3/2 and 50. Okay, I'm going to use a little smaller pen there. So that's going to be 1 point. So we can go, sorry, not 50. My apologies. This point is actually 32. Our slope is 50. Okay, so 32. So that is actually 1 point at 3/2 and 32. And when we're in that point slope form, we can figure that out by taking this value and this value. This is our x and this is our y. Remember that this negative is part of the point slope form. So if we were to have y plus 32 or x plus 3/2, then we would have to use a negative 32 as our point on the y-axis and a negative 3/2 as our point on the x-axis. But since we have minuses in the equation that we were given, we can use a plus 3/2 and a plus 32 for our coordinates. Okay, so that's 1 point, but then the other thing that we know here is that this goes up at a nice steep slope of m equal 50. So that means for every 1 unit that we go up here, and so that unit, if I were to add 2/2, if I were to add 1 unit, which is the same as 2/2, I would get 5/2 here. So every 1 unit on the x-axis gives me 50 units on the y-axis. So this is our y-axis. So 50 plus 32 is 82. So my point, a new point that I can utilize, just knowing one point and the slope, is 5/2 and 82. Okay, and that corresponds with this one here. Okay. All right, the last question for the Lesson 10 project is, in Module 4, you wrote an equation to represent the distance a shoplifter traveled from the store. That equation was 7x minus 5y equals negative 140. Okay, I had a moment of confusion, but I've resolved it. I just realized that the equation that we came up with for lesson 9 it doesn't match exactly what they came up with for lesson 9, but they are the same equation. Essentially, I had come up with negative 7x plus 5y equals a positive 140, which if you were to multiply everything by a negative 1 would become 7x minus 5y equals a negative 140. So these are essentially the same, but just know that we had it slightly different. So again, same answers, but two different ways to write it. So describe in a note to Agent Theo Baker how to graph the line. Also describe what the line looks like, and be sure to be descriptive and clear because he only has this note to work from. Okay, so I think what we can do here is just go ahead and type and say given. You can use either equation. I'm going to go ahead and use the one that I came up with. Given negative 7x plus 5y equals 140, we can substitute x equals 0 to find the y-intercept at 28, and the let's see, we can then substitute y equal 0 to find the x-intercept at x equal negative 20. This line will go through the points 0 and 28 and negative 20 and 0. It will have a slope of 7/5. And that is really all you need to write to get a great grade on this particular question. So that's it for lesson 10, and that is also it for all of project 2. And after you save this, you'll be able to submit it and hopefully get 100% on this project. So thank you for taking the time to listen.